What do the giants think of the king?
Was Elvis bigger than the small screen?
Was the big screen large enough?
How did he climb the mountain to superstardom?
What caused the slide downhill?
Will his followers remember him forever?
Entertainment This Week pays homage to the king 10 years after his passing.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lisa Gibbons.
And I'm Rob Weller, and welcome to this special edition of Entertainment This Week, commemorating the life and times of Elvis Presley.
10 years ago, on August 16th, Presley died at the age of 42 at Graceland, the mansion his music had paid for.
He was the undisputed king of rock and roll. Elvis has had 107 top 40 hits. In a distant second place, the Beatles had less than half that amount. Presley's songs have spent a total of 80 weeks at the #1 spot, and 10% of the all-time top 100 songs are by Elvis.
But astonishing statistics are only part of the Presley saga. His journey to Graceland and the commensurate wealth and recognition got off to a very humble start.
I've been traveling over miles.
It began in Tupelo, Mississippi, in a shotgun shack that Vernon Presley built with his own hands and 180 borrowed dollars. It was called a shotgun shack because it was said you could stand at the front door with the shotgun and the barrel would stick out the back door.
On January 8th, 1935, Elvis Aaron Presley was born to Vernon and Gladys Love Presley. Elvis's twin brother, Jesse Guerin, died at birth. Elvis felt special from the start.
You know, Elvis always felt that he had to be more than just himself. He had to be as much as two people would be to make up to his mother and father for the loss of his twin brother at birth.
Vernon had trouble finding steady work in Tupelo and took his family north to Memphis in 1948. There, Elvis attended Humes High and received an F in music. He also met lifelong friend George Klein.
Elvis and I met in high school in 1948 at Humes High School in Memphis. We went all the way through high school exactly together in the exact same class. I was the president of the class, and I was sort of interested in show business in high school, and so was Elvis.
That interest in show business led Elvis to local Sun Recording Studio, where he teamed up with Scotty Moore, Bill Black, and producer Sam Phillips.
It's all around my mama, anyway do.
I had in mind trying to find a white man in no way that mimicked a black man, but borrowed from in feel and in essence. And so, and yet still had his own style, very distinctive. So, I just believed that Presley would last a long time.
I heard him New Year's Eve. It was my 14th birthday, and I stayed out till 4 in the morning, and the next day I'd heard that record that night, and the next day I was looking all over town for That's All Right, Mama. But I couldn't, me and this buddy of mine had his name wrong. We thought his name was Almond Parsley. And if you think back 25 years ago, Elvis Presley was a real unusual name. I'd never even heard of anybody named Elvis.
I left my home in Norfolk, Virginia, California, home of mine.
Elvis hit the road with his band and began touring the South. The group hooked up with drummer DJ Fontana during a performance at the Louisiana Hayride.
Bob Neal out of Memphis was doing the managing and the booking. And we worked a lot of little schoolhouses for back of buses and trucks and feed mills and just, you name it, and we worked them. He kept getting hotter and hotter. Probably when I realized the man was really going to become a giant. We worked the Cotton Bowl. We had about 40,000 people. And back in the early 50s, that was unheard of to have that many people, and even for a football game.
As his popularity grew, Elvis desperately wanted a big hit record. He turned to his friend, songwriter, and concert promoter Mae Axton.
When Tommy Dodd and I wrote Heartbreak Hotel, I knew immediately that was the song I was wanting for Elvis. So I called him, and we went to my room in the old Andrew Jackson Hotel in Nashville, which doesn't exist anymore, And I played it for him, and he said, "Hot dog, Mae, play it again."
Well, since my baby upon you place to dwell, down at the end of Lonely Street at Heartbreak Hotel.
Elvis met Colonel Tom Parker through Mae Axton. The two joined forces, and Colonel Tom immediately began negotiating a deal with Steve Sholes of RCA Records. Elvis, always on the lookout for new material, became interested in a song by Mike Stoller and Jerry Lieber. He recorded it, and in 1956, America found out about hound dogs.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time.
I think his strengths were the knowledge of both gospel music, I shouldn't say both, all of gospel music, country music, and a strong knowledge, a solid knowledge of rhythm and blues.
He was one of the first heroes, or major international heroes, to come out of the lower classes. He represented the renegade, revolutionary, anti-establishment stance of youth.
Boosted by TV appearances, Elvis's recording career took off. But just when it seemed nothing would slow the Presley powerhouse, Uncle Sam called, and Elvis answered.
I got those 1, 2, 3, 4 occupation GI Blue.
Presley served as a regular soldier with the 3rd Armored Division in West Germany, and it was there that he met Joe Esposito, a man who would become his friend, best man, and confidant throughout the rest of his life.
In the Army, you have to do what they tell you to. And that tamed him down tremendously. You know, he got his hair short, and we got rid of the sideburns. And the older people liked him because he served this country and didn't go to special services. And I think he felt he didn't want to do anything to jeopardize that.
Even though he was isolated from his public and cut off from the recording studio, Elvis continued to change the world.
Occupation GI Blue.
Ready.
Elvis seemed to look a little more tender, I don't know, more vulnerable in some of that old news footage.
When he wasn't on stage?
Yeah.
When he was on stage, he had great control.
Did a lot for the Army.
Yeah.
A king, in the truest sense of the word, is remembered most, I guess, by the influence that he had on his subjects.
We're going to look at Elvis through the eyes of some of today's top recording stars and how he influenced their careers when we return.
It's not ordinary, my love. Well, bless my soul, what's wrong with me?
Question, how did your parents react to Elvis when you were a kid?
They thought unkind thoughts, actually.
They thought he was pretty wild.
Oh, my mother loved him. And all I can remember them saying is, this is music.
No, creo que apreciaban como cantaba. Because they really liked how he sang. They thought he was terrible. We weren't allowed to go watch him in movies. Were you?
I'm all shook up.
Well, you couldn't feel ambivalent about Elvis. People loved him, people hated him, but people noticed him because nothing about Elvis Presley was ordinary.
His recorded voice has been heard by more ears worldwide than any other voice in history, and some of those listening went on to write, record, and produce hit albums of their own. In nearly every case, Elvis had a far-reaching effect on them.
I don't think Elvis knew how popular he was and how charismatic he was. He really didn't. But the impact of after he died was very strong, and realized, you know, who this man really was and who he influenced, and all the people that he got started in this business. I mean, John Lennon and Bruce Springsteen, all these people.
I think that Elvis did. I think that what he did, I think, helped a lot of people, you know. And I know it helped me, you know. It made me a different person, you know. And it's kind of a personal thing, but I think you can change the way they feel about things, the way they see things. You know, it happened to me, so it must be, it's got to be able to happen to, you know, other people.
Well, I suppose Elvis Presley was one of the first people to take black music and make it popular. You know, Elvis Presley made popular things that were going on in the plantations, and he, I suppose, was, you know, I don't know if he started rock and roll, but he was the forerunner in rock and roll. So everybody was influenced by Elvis Presley. I mean, I don't know anybody who hasn't got an Elvis record. You know, everybody I know has got Heartbreak Hotel or Jailhouse Rock, you know.
Do you sing any Elvis songs?
Yeah. Are you lonesome tonight? Will you miss me tonight?
Are you sorry we drifted apart? Does your memory stray to a bright summer day when I kissed you and called you sweetheart?
I did one show with Elvis at the Overton Park Shell in August 1955, and then his manager hired me in the Tennessee 2 to go on tour with Elvis in Mississippi and Texas and throughout the South. And we worked about 3 months with him, and I learned a lot from Elvis Presley. I learned a lot about performing and projection from Elvis. I didn't have the charisma he had, but I couldn't dance like he could, and I wasn't as pretty as he was, but I learned a lot from him about stage presence and about show business.
Elvis was able to open doors because in this country, the whites were somewhat reluctant to a black face in their room. And when I first made my first album, they didn't allow my picture to be on the cover. Elvis did a lot for us.
I still think Elvis Presley was a fantastic performer, a great singer, and I loved the songs. You know, what impressed me was the songs, because they were great songs, like Liebe und Stolz were superb. He was a charismatic performer, and he had a brilliant voice. And I think he's influenced us in the extent that he was pop.
Elvis Presley was the beginning of youth culture, basically. Definitely in this country, he was the beginning of youth culture. And without that, there wouldn't be, of course, there wouldn't have been a Beatles, there wouldn't have been us, for sure. You know, because people were, up until then, were all young adults. And then Elvis, like, created the first real youth.
I used to have a friend called Ian James when we were about 15 or so. We used to have these great jackets with a little flap on the pocket, and a fleck material. We used to think we were really hot. We used to go around the fairgrounds and stuff. But occasionally you'd get really depressed. So we'd maybe go back to his house and put on an Elvis record. Don't Be Cruel or All Shook Up. And it used to do it. Ding! 5 minutes later, we were feeling good again.
I'm in love. I'm all shook up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
While Elvis's music and charisma inspired new generations of songwriters, his unprecedented record sales restructured the industry and gave rise to a new breed of music critic, disc jockey, and record executive.
Unfortunately, Elvis Presley came along at a time that the RIAA statistics had not begun. The certification process began in the, I believe, late 50s or the early 60s. So there's a whole era of gold records that, had the system been in place, he would have been entitled to. He sold in excess of 1 billion records worldwide. That is absolutely a fact.
I think it was revolutionary. I think, first of all, he wasn't the first person to do rock country music, but he was the first person to make it a big-time commodity all over the country. And it shook the music business down to its socks. It changed the entire history of the music business.
I think that anybody who has very much background in thinking or writing about pop music has to think of Elvis as the #1 guy, simply because he marked such a watershed. It was real different before him. And everything that happened after him couldn't have happened without him.
There was a very great rock critic named Lester Bangs, and I think it was Lester Bangs, who said that Elvis Presley was the first and probably the last thing that my generation could agree on.
Oh, Lord, my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made. One night with you.
When Presleymania hit in 1956, the St. Petersburg Evening Independent summed it all up in a line. That line read, "The Pied Piper of rock and roll, a swivel-hipped, leg-lashing entertainment bomb, blasted the downtown area into chaos yesterday."
There were to be many such chaotic yesterdays to come as Elvis cut a path across the nation. When he first walked into the Memphis recording service, the sign read, "We record anything, anywhere, anytime." Not quite, but they were about to.
Elvis was then asked who he sounded like. He replied, "I don't sound like nobody." And television audiences had never seen a nobody like him.
Baby, if I made you mad, something I might have said.
Elvis's love affair with television spanned 3 decades, but it was hardly love at first sight. In the mid-50s, Elvis was so controversial, there were a lot of people trying to keep him and rock and roll off the air.
Rock and roll has got to go. And go it does at KWK. We're all through playing rock and roll records.
The obscenity and vulgarity of the rock and roll music is obviously a means by which the white man and his children can be driven to the level with the nigger. It is obviously nigger music.
We've set up a 20-man committee to do away with this vulgar, animalistic nigger rock and roll bop.
People were definitely not interested in showing Elvis Presley to the world. He was not a kind of commodity that they wanted. He wasn't slick, he wasn't nice, he represented a lower strata of American society. You know, he didn't brush his hair. He did what people thought were obscene gestures, were actually more like stripper kind of moves that he had picked up from strippers.
Promoter Bill Randall tried for months to get Elvis on a TV show, any TV show.
We'd like you to meet him now, Elvis Presley, and here he is.
On January 28, 1956, Elvis finally made his TV debut on the Dorsey Brothers stage show.
Get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. While I roll my breakfast, cause I'm a hungry man. I believe you're doing me wrong, and now I know. I believe you're doing me wrong, and now I know. Cause the harder I work, the faster my money goes. Well, I said, shake, rattle, and roll. I said, shake, rattle, and roll. I said, shake.
Among the viewers that night, Steve Allen.
They presented a number of acts, and one of them was this lanky, sort of ungainly, even slightly amateurish kid. And he wasn't a great singer, but he had something remarkable about him, star quality. And I just dictated a note at that moment, let's book this kid.
Your new record hit, I predict it's going to be one because I've heard you rehearse it. You're going to record it tomorrow, called Hound Dog.
A bit of offbeat Elvis cost Allen $7,500, 6 times what Elvis had gotten a few months earlier for his first TV appearance.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time.
The Steve Allen Show, with a little help from Elvis, got 55% of the TV audience that night.
Well, I said you was high class. Well, that was just a lie. Yeah, they said you was...
Among those watching was Allen's prime competition, Ed Sullivan, who called Elvis's manager on the set of the Steve Allen Show.
He said, Sullivan says he will offer us 5 confirmed appearances for $10,000 each. In those days, you got $7,500, no matter whose show you were on, and that was it. We said to Colonel Parker, well, that's very nice of you to come. He was saying, if you can meet this offer, you can have Elvis as often as you want him. You can have him every week if you want him. So we said, no, thank you. We said, we do a comedy show, and we send you to Ed Sullivan with our blessings.
Elvis Presley! Well, honey, I love you, I know too much. I need your love, and I know too much.
Sullivan had once said that Elvis would never do his show. On his first appearance, Elvis brought Sullivan 80% of the audience. But the controversy was far from over. Elvis's third Ed Sullivan Show was to be an historic first, a live switch from New York to Elvis in Hollywood and back to the rest of the Sullivan Show in New York. Sullivan was worried about more than the technical bugs.
Ed said we're in trouble. Elvis is doing something in these concerts that can no way be seen on television. He said he's hanging some kind of a device in the crotch of his pants that hangs down so that when he moves his knee back and forth like that, it looks like his personal organ in his body, and Ed used a little better language than that, is waving back and forth just above his knee. And he said, we can't have that on Sunday night. That's a church night. On that show, I took camera 2 and I said, dolly into a chest shot and stay there. And for the entire 6 minutes, we only saw Elvis from his chest to his head. And we never revealed the rest of Elvis, nor did anyone ever see this implement between his legs. And I'll tell you a secret, it wasn't there.
Through most of the 60s, Elvis avoided television, concentrating on his movies. 1968, NBC contracted Elvis to do a TV special with only Christmas songs. But producer Steve Binder talked Elvis into giving the public what it had been missing, a fiery rock idol.
I'm the king of the jungle, they call me Tiger Man.
What made the show so special is he was really adrenalized and wanted to do well. I mean, he was real concerned whether the public would accept him again in person.
The 68 special brought the old Elvis image back with a fury, an image that had been tamed by 8 years of making movies.
Mysteriously, Elvis would once again shy away from TV, this time for 5 years.
My brain is flaming, I don't know which way to go.
In 1973, it was a troubled, overweight Elvis who talked to producer Marty Pacetta about yet another TV comeback.
When I got through with all my preamble about what I was going to do, and besides, I would like to have you go on a diet, and I want you to lose weight, he said, you know, it's one of the first times anybody's ever been honest with me. And he says, I will go on a diet for you. In fact, subsequently, he did. He lost 25 pounds for me in 2 months.
The Aloha special from Hawaii would be his biggest and his best. It aired live via satellite to the Far East, was broadcast the next day to Europe, and the next month to the United States. In all, more than 1 billion people watched. That's more than watched the first man walk on the moon.
Not too many performers, or not of any place in the world, could have that command of the human race that Elvis had.
Next, a real treat. We'll take you to the Elvis movies. With so many devoted fans, those films had no problem grossing millions.
But could Elvis have evolved into an accomplished actor? Hollywood takes a stand on that issue as our salute to Elvis continues.
Shake the little tambourine, shake a ring-a-jing-jing-a-ling, shake, shake, one little dancing queens, shake that tambourine, that tambourine.
Hey, which Elvis movie was your favorite, Lisa?
Well, I liked Elvis movies because they're great for weekends to curl up, and they're sappy, and he plays the same part.
Are you avoiding the question?
No, I liked Blue Hawaii.
That's what he liked. That was his favorite formula film.
Yeah, and you?
Clam bake.
Clam bake. Why'd you like that one, Rob?
I love seafood, Lisa.
Uh-huh, okay.
Elvis movies were, and still are, a staple of American life. The plots were simple, with romance, music, and plenty of what the people paid for, which was Elvis. Right.
But Elvis had ambition to be a legitimate actor, to be respected within the Hollywood community for more than his pop stardom. Leonard Maltin looks at a movie career that, unfortunately for us, fell short of Elvis's goals.
Don't like crazy music, don't like rockin' bands.
How do you like our movie star, Peggy?
He has adapted very quickly.
Baby, I don't care.
Elvis took to Hollywood all right and spent a lot of time here. In fact, that was once his dressing room at Paramount. But what surprised a lot of people in the industry and in the audience was how quickly he took to film itself. He was a natural.
Elvis made his film debut behind a plow, not a microphone, in Love Me Tender. An odd choice for a rock and roll star, since the story was set in the 1860s. But Hollywood has never let historical accuracy get in the way of entertainment.
Let me have another dance with you.
Richard Egan, who got top billing as Elvis's older brother, remembered his first encounter with his celebrated co-star.
I liked him. When he came on the set, he was very modest. He realized that he hadn't had any experience as an actor, and he wasn't afraid to ask you for help. And he remained very simple, very direct, very straightforward.
Elvis's next film, Loving You, brought him into the 20th century and traded on his real-life success story. But writer-director Hal Kanter discovered that his star was a lot savvier than anyone suspected.
He said, do I have to smile much in the movie? And I said, what do you mean, smile? He said, well, I've been studying, he said, the people the girls like. Jimmy Dean, Humphrey Bogart, Marlon Brando, and they don't ever smile. And if I don't smile, I'm gonna get them.
And it was an unsmiling, sometimes surly Elvis who made an impact in films like Jailhouse Rock.
How dare you think such cheap tactics would work with me?
That ain't tactics, honey. It's just the beast in me.
Walking through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there, they began to wail. The band was jumping and the joint began to swing. You should have heard the knocked out jailbird sing and rock.
Elvis fans and film buffs agree. This was just about the best thing he ever did on screen. But when he came back from the service, a different Elvis emerged. A clean-cut, girl-happy boy next door.
Work. She's jealous.
She should be.
This Elvis smiled a lot and attracted millions of fans to lighthearted musicals like Blue Hawaii. It was an Elvis that even a grandmother could love.
Falling in love with
And films like this created a kind of Elvis formula. A little action, a lot of songs, and a parade of pretty girls.
You have to remember that all his pictures are pre-sold. I mean, his fans bought whatever they put out. I mean, they knew how much money they were going to make on the picture damn near in front.
When the steam finally ran out of those formula musicals, Elvis tried some change of pace vehicles. They didn't help his sagging screen career. But the most interesting movie in Elvis's career was the one he never made. Barbra Streisand wanted him to play opposite her in A Star is Born as the self-destructive rock singer, and it would have been fascinating. It might have changed his life and career. And could he have handled such a meaty role? Well, people who worked with Elvis over the years certainly think so.
There have been moments where a great deal of thoughtfulness, a great deal of potential in going that one step further into something really important, you know, I think he would have been terrific. Elvis could have been really a very good dramatic actor or a good light comedian. There was a great deal more to the man than appeared, particularly in his later films.
In Love Me Tender, it was a dramatic part, and he showed extraordinary ability to catch on. And I thought that they should have been aware of that. Instead, they seemed to put him in front of a backdrop and have him sing a song. Well, he could do that easily, you know, but he had much more depth to him.
Happy ending, give me a story with a happy ending.
But let's not dwell too much on what might have been. Elvis may not have fully proven himself as an actor, but he certainly proved himself as a movie star. And that's one kind of happy ending.
I don't know. It's a tough call as to whether he really could have sustained and, as Leonard says, taken meaty roles.
Well,
and parlayed them into something?
The Star is Born question is, it's moot, obviously, for a couple of reasons. But one is he turned it down. I mean, he didn't take it, so.
Well, if he never got better lines than brings out the beast in me, I don't think he would have made it anyway.
She loved that line. Come back to Entertainment this week's Salute to Elvis as we examine the world-famous Presley generosity.
Like a fool, treat me mean and cruel. You know I can be found, sitting home all alone. If you can't come around, at least please telephone. Don't be cruel to who heart is true. Baby, if I made you mad, something I might have said. Please don't forget my past. The future looks bright ahead. Don't be cruel to whose heart is true. I don't want no other love, but baby, it's just you I'm thinking of. Don't stop thinking of me. Don't make me feel this way. Come on over here and love me. You know.
And welcome back to Entertainment This Week as we continue our special salute to Elvis Presley on the 10th anniversary of his death. I'm Rob Weller.
And I'm Lisa Gibbons.
Elvis had kind of a desire to always be loved.
Oh, always was seeking approval. Part of that was this generosity that has become legendary. In fact, that's a big part of the Elvis mystique. The record shows that in his lifetime, Elvis gave away over 100 new Cadillacs, many of them to total strangers.
During one buying spree in Denver, a local disc jockey heard Elvis was in town and that he'd purchased Cadillacs for 2 residents. So as a joke, the DJ went on the air and said it would be nice if Elvis would buy him a Cadillac, and guess who was listening? Yep. The DJ picked out his new car that same day.
Presley's generosity, though, wasn't an outgrowth of wealth or fame. It had been part of him since birth. In fact, to his friend Mae Axton, who had given Elvis his first hit, Heartbreak Hotel, Elvis gave the shirt off his back.
Elvis wore a lot of lace shirts, and I would tease him saying it'd make me a beautiful blouse. He had a pink one on I loved. And about 2 weeks later, after I'd made a remark like that, he sent me one of his lace shirts that he had worn himself. And I'd just like for you to see that he fit into this shirt back in the early days. This is the shirt Elvis sent me. It's still good. I've had it all these years. And he fit into this shirt. And yet he was a very macho, sexy young man with this magic that drew all these people to him. Had the charisma to draw them all around him. But this is one of Elvis's lace shirts that he sent to me.
One last story. An old blues singer who knew Elvis from his early days in Memphis asked to borrow some money. Of course, Elvis was known for never carrying cash, so he wrote out a check on the back of a grocery bag, and his bank cashed it.
I guess Elvis didn't need those little bank check cards.
No, I have to pull out a string of ID before I get mine cashed, that's for sure.
All right, the Elvis story continues. Stay with us.
A long line of limos and thousands of mourners crowded the streets 10 years ago.
What happened to bring about the downfall of the king? We'll trace the ordeal of Elvis's personal tragedy when we return with Entertainment This Week's salute to rock and roll's king.
Fancy cars. There's a long line of mornings driving down our little street, and now they've finally brought you home to me.
Powerful images of what was a very painful time in many people's lives.
Especially after what we've been talking about so far on the show, you know, the potential that he could have, reached.
You're exactly right.
The death of Elvis Presley became a milestone in people's lives. But what happened to bring down the dream at such a young age?
Forever, my darling, our love will be true.
It was something he'd always dreamed of, a normal life, marriage and family. And in May of 1967, it seemed possible. He married Priscilla Beaulieu in a small ceremony in Las Vegas, attended by family and a few friends.
He always wanted to be married just once, have a family, and that would be it.
And 9 months later to the day, they were a family. Daughter Lisa Marie was born.
Oh, girl of mine, you make my day.
But Elvis was becoming increasingly disenchanted with the movies he was making, always a tiring repeat of the same story, Elvis singing and fighting and wooing women.
He began to long for the adoration of his fans again. So in 1968, he staged the comeback concert, which temporarily boosted his self-esteem.
I'm the king of the jungle, they call me the Tiger Man.
The demands of television, movies, and live performances left little time for Priscilla and Lisa Marie. That, coupled with the constant presence of his friends who actually lived with him at Graceland, took its toll on the marriage.
Times we thought we cared for each other.
They see me as someone who left a person, you know, that they all loved, okay? Well, they're not living in a situation. They have no idea what I went through, or how can I say what the next door neighbors are going through.
And what happened is we were gone all the time. Priscilla was left alone, small baby. I mean, not alone financially or anything, but here's a young girl that she could understand the work situation, but that was, we were gone so much at the time.
Jerry Schilling was one of Elvis's closest friends and a member of a group the press began calling the Memphis Mafia. The membership fluctuated through the years, but it was these men and Elvis's many female companions who were privy to his most private moments.
Elvis was very sensitive. I mean, you could walk in and have a problem on your mind that you didn't want him to know about. He knew it. You walk in the house, I mean, he'd come in and say, hey, you know, you want to talk about it?
He enjoyed spending money. I mean, he loved to make people happy. I mean, if you needed something real bad and he knew it, he'd tell one of the other guys, hey, go out and get, buy this guy here a brand new car. His car's broken down.
He would almost get upset if there was something he wanted to give somebody and they would say no. It was like a little kid, but why? Why don't you want this?
Although Elvis had made millions of dollars, his extravagance often stretched his bank account to the limit. He gave away over 100 Cadillacs and $1 million in jewelry in his lifetime.
Many times he'd run out and he'd call the colonel and say, Colonel, we need some money. He said, okay, let's go out and work. And they go out and make a few million.
Parker, a shrewd promoter, controlled where and when Elvis performed.
There's one thing that the Colonel had, and he had Elvis Presley's respect. I don't think there was anybody else that could have had that respect and could have controlled the situations, because nobody could have gotten to Elvis, only because he totally trusted Colonel.
When Elvis was on the stage, the Colonel didn't eat. The Colonel didn't drink. The Colonel didn't do nothing but standing there and staring like he looked at a statue on his only possession. That was life.
Elvis first started singing in church. Gospel music always appealed to him. Many times after his shows, he'd relax by singing a little gospel with the singers in his backup group.
Elvis was a very, 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 very religious man. I've sat and talked with him and prayed with him more than I have with any other person that I know. And he never, I'm a very sentimental person, he never listened to anything but gospel music.
Even with a strong faith, Elvis's life was hard. He could go nowhere without being dogged by fans. For years, he hadn't eaten in a restaurant or gone to a movie theater. And on top of that, there seemed to be nothing left that he hadn't done.
It's very hard to comprehend it.
There was no new challenges for Elvis. He needed something new. When he did the Aloha from Hawaii special, he really got up for that, and he had a big spurt of energy, and he was great. He looked fabulous.
He had told me that he had tried things just to keep sane. He thought that maybe taking different drugs, trying different things, would keep him sane, because he seemed to be nervous of actually going on stage completely, sober.
Many times on the road, he talked about he didn't know what he was going to do, how he was going to be able to walk around in his jumpsuits on stage when he's 60 years old.
He was expected not to never make a mistake. So he had to feel good. He was expected to go out there and be 1,000%. So if he could take a pill to do that, then he done it. Not to disappoint his fans.
I'm looking back on my life. See if I can find the pieces.
I think Elvis was exactly what he wanted to be and what he should have been. He was never cut out to be the guy next door.
But I guess I threw the best parts away.
If you had him as a friend, he was your best friend.
My friends wrote for me to sing.
It was just basically loyalty is what he expected, and in return, he gave him a chance to live history.
Looking back on my life, God help me find the pieces.
Now, even 10 years after his death, there is still controversy surrounding Elvis.
Elvis is still very much making headlines. The circumstances surrounding his death are still being debated. His will is still being contested.
And there are rumors and allegations that he fathered other children.
Of course, and thousands of people are expected to show up at Graceland to commemorate the anniversary of his death.
We're going to show you the latest line of merchandise when our salute to Elvis returns.
Baby, let me be.
In the decade since his death, Elvis has spawned a major merchandising industry, so it will surprise no one that the 10th anniversary ushers a whole new line of souvenirs.
Everything from a home video called 10 Years Later to this $35 compendium of Elvis facts, including his mama's recipe for fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches.
Ooh, I'd like to have that one. Now, what do you think Elvis himself would have thought about all this, Rob?
Well, they say that he had a great sense of humor. I think he probably got a kick out of this stuff, Lisa.
Well, we can only hope so, because Bob Sarlott, who does a pretty righteous version of Jailhouse Rock himself, went searching for some of the off-the-wall items in the latest spate of Elvis gimcracks.
Oh, hi. Well, it's been 10 years, all right. And as you'd expect, some of the Elvis merchandising has been geared up to capitalize on the anniversary. There, of course, is the usual array of T-shirts and jackets commemorating the anniversary of the King of Rock and Roll's death. This one here, pretty lifelike, huh? Victor Mature is Elvis. This is the official T-shirt for the commemoration. Not bad. And this jacket I like a lot. This says Forever Elvis, with the official slogan for this year's commemoration, 10 years is forever. Crazy, kooky me, I always thought 10 years was a decade. And Lord knows you could spend a decade listening to this. Yes, it's the official Love Me Tender musical shirt. Let's take a listen. Beautiful. And of course here, made in Pakistan. Yes, home of fine Elvis wear for many, many years.
Love me tender.
The biggest merchandising push this year involves Elvis's music, commemorative collections of his hits, already selling well in record stores.
Elvis Presley's fans are amongst the most loyal in the world, and they won't let us forget that this is a very significant anniversary.
In addition to the records, there are, of course, the obligatory Elvis trinkets, starting off with the very tasteful Elvis cookie jar, the pink Cadillac, reminiscent of the snack in Elvis. Next, the Elvis timepiece. This is nice, the pink Cadillac secondhand. Ooh, huh? The Elvis keychain with, again, the official slogan, 10 years is forever. The Elvis pin with the official slogan, because we care. Because we care. That's the official slogan. 10 years is forever is out because we care. Over here, the Elvis commemorative kit. I think we'll all like this. This has the sticker with the official slogan, Elvis Tribute in Blue. Tribute in Blue. That is the official slogan. Well, whatever the slogan is, I think you know how Elvis would feel about all this merchandising. In the words of the king himself, hey, man, hey, thank you very much. I think you'd know he'd mean each and every word of that. Bob Sarlott. Entertainment this week.
Well, some of the Elvis memorabilia is worth a lot of money.
Oh, you bet.
We don't really have any on the set. We do have one thing, though. We have the an outfit that was worn by Elvis.
From the later days. It's actually not ours. It's on loan.
No, you're right, exactly. It's very, very expensive, and things are worth a lot of money, autographs and what.
We were saying the guy who used the grocery bag with Elvis had given him a loan, used that as a check.
Yeah.
If he hadn't cashed that and used it as an autograph collection, he probably would have made out better on that deal.
Worth a lot more money. Well, we've traced the life and legend of Elvis. We've examined his brilliant career, and we've looked at some of his shortcomings. But in all the hoopla, we've tried to emphasize the music, for it was Elvis's music that remains his greatest gift to us, and the music will carry on.
Elvis was a saint and a sinner, an overindulgent good old boy, and a sensitive, compassionate artist. He was all things to all people, and his flame burned so brightly it could not last the night. But as the years and tributes roll by, he'll continue to be forever Elvis. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I wonder if you're lonesome tonight. You know, someone said the world's a stage and each must play a part. Fate had me playing in love with you as my sweetheart. Act 1 was where we met.
Spend the night away with Elvis. Next, CFCF presents his 1958 movie King Creole, followed by Love Me Tender and Elvis Memories.
Then came Act 2. You seemed to change, you acted strange, and why I've never known. Honey, you lied when you said you loved me, and I had no cause to doubt you. But I'd rather go on hearing your lies than to go on living without you. Now the stage is bare, and I'm standing there with emptiness all around. And if he won't come back to me, then they can bring the curtain down. Is your heart filled with pain? Shall I come back again? Tell me, dear, are you lonesome too?